Well, welcome back again to the Unlearning podcast. I am Stuart Delony, and I'm joined, as always, with JD Forehand and Karl Forehand. If you're ever wanting to reach out to us to tell us we're doing a great job, tell us we're heretics, tell us we're idiots, tell us we're brilliant, whatever you want to tell us, ask questions. You can reach out to us at theunlearningcurvepodcast at gmail.com. And for today's session, we're going to be talking about elephants and bridges and crossing bridges. Karl, you're the elephant man right now, so
yeah, thank you. It's entitled "Why Did the Elephant Cross the Bridge?" So last weekend, Laura and I went on a day trip. We drove 5.5 hours. It's still in Missouri. We're in the northwest corner. We drove down to we call it St. Louis all the time. It's 5.5 hour drive. We went after school and got there at 10 o'clock. And when we got there, we noticed the exit was closed to our hotel, and so we had to drive around and went through a college campus. I don't even know what college it was, but the best way I can describe it is feral. It's like people were everywhere, and we found out later there were 2 or 3 different things going on, and these big golf carts were running around. And we found out later it was a balloon festival. And maybe some of those golf carts were looking for the balloons or whatever that might have got away. But it was just crazy. It was like Animal House across the whole community. Anyway, so at 60 years old, we're not a fan of that. So the next morning, we had to get a good night's rest. The next morning, we woke up and had a really good breakfast. And then we went to the Missouri History Museum, which is pretty exciting, except most of the exhibits were closed. So it was kind of low key, and saw a lot of things about racism and so on that were real interesting. But then down in the basement, there's usually a theater or assembly place, and then there's a couple more exhibits. But most of the exhibits were closed except for this one that was kind of in an open area that opened up to the floor above it. And what it talked about was the Eads Bridge. It's like EADS. So it's about a bridge that was built by James Eads, EADS. And I'm bringing this up. So he was
a handsome fellow.
Yeah. So after the Civil War, St. Louis saw major growth, but the Mississippi River was a big obstacle for railroads. So it made the transfer of goods slow and awkward. So this bridge was created in 1874. It was the world's first steel arch bridge, the first one to use steel as a major structural component. The old ones had, like wood with metal mixed in, or used as connectors or whatever. But as you can see, it has a railroad or a railway that runs on the lower level, and then the upper level is a platform that people could drive across and so on with their horses. So he was a self-taught engineer at the time, and this bridge is pioneering in the use of pneumatic caissons and for its piers and cantilever construction, all those kind of things. Everything was kind of revolutionary. But that isn't the most interesting part of the story. The most interesting part of the story comes a little later, and here's a picture of, kind of the times. This might have been after the bridge was built. You can see it in the background. But the most interesting part of the story is that he first parked 21 locomotives on the under part of the bridge, and then because it was believed that elephants won't walk across an unstable surface, a lot of people were worried, and so they took an elephant. You can see in this picture. I think this is an actual picture. I don't know for sure. But you can see, and I'm pointing to it like you can see my finger, but why did the elephant cross the bridge? The elephant was crossing the bridge to demonstrate the bridge's strength, and that it would hold up people and things like that, if it would hold up an elephant. And elephants are supposed to know if it wasn't stable. So besides being an important part of history, especially regarding bridges and buildings, why was it necessary to learn about this for my state? Well, I said to avoid overplaying wordplay, I'd say that lessons about building bridges are essential because creating connection points is very difficult. And considering the state of our world today, it's hard to picture a bridge that's strong enough for that, especially when we've linked it to mystical thinking and magical thinking. So when we on this podcast sometimes say that, in this podcast sometimes we'll say we need to build bridges between people, right? And I think sometimes when we think about that and when we contemplated that in church and we thought about witnessing or going on a mission trip or something like that, it was kind of conceived as that's too hard. And so let's think mystically or magically about it. Let's pray that we'll have God encounters. I don't know, Stuart or JD, if you've heard that before. I'm sure JD has, because I know the churches he was in, that they would think about that mystically or magically. But the statement I made in the post, the blog, was building bridges isn't mystical or magical. It's mechanical. And there's some things maybe that we could learn about that. And I want to give you a chance to chime in if you want to at any time. But or I'll just keep...
No, I think it's, I'm just, I actually have questions, Karl.
Sure.
And it really has to do with the balloon festival.
Yeah.
I can't fully move on from this.
You
So
can't
was this
stop
like,
that.
I mean, was it like just like little inflatable balloons, or is it like
I had the
clowns
same
and people
question.
twisting them into animals? Yeah, just tell us more about
Or were
what
these
is it?
hot air balloons? I was also wondering.
Yes,
These hot
yeah.
air balloons.
I-
What kind of?
So I think it was a hot air balloon festival.
Oh, okay.
They have a
But you didn't
huge...
see them?
It was 11 o'clock at night. So I'm assuming they were done, and maybe they had like a nighttime, where they lifted them on cables or something and kind of lit them up. But I didn't actually see the balloons.
So wait, what are your context clues that this was a balloon festival, or was this like a late night of drinking and you assumed?
There's lots of
Yeah.
nitrous oxide containers everywhere, spent balloons. I think that may have
Yeah,
been
I
you.
was
You actually
delirious.
just ran into the meeting of the Juggalos.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I ran into, couldn't describe very accurately, but then at the hotel, I said, "What's going on?" And they told me. They said, "There's,
Okay. Afterwards.
among other things," is what she said, "there's a large balloon festival," and I took that to mean hot air balloons. And they have a huge park there, which I don't remember the name of because I was focused on the bridges. So.
And the elephants too, because I'm also just curious that, like, did people just rent out this elephant just to go around, like, for bridges? Was this before we had like levels, those little levels with a little bubble in it that tells us if something's level or not? And it was like,
Yeah.
elephants were easier at this time.
Yeah, so in the accounting of this in history, people just didn't trust it. They didn't trust steel as a
Okay.
major component. And it looks like, because when you look at it, it doesn't look as solid, right? It looks like an erector set kind of thing. And so the myth was that elephants can detect that. They can detect when a surface is unstable, and they won't go across it. That was the myth. We don't know if that's true or not, really.
No, it's such a funny, weird way that we used to like justify doing things. Or like, well, this bridge is fine. It's elephant approved.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is 9 years later, the Brooklyn Bridge was completed using similar construction, and P.T. Barnum was hired, and they marched 21 elephants to prove that it was really, really stable. But, against the many, many locomotives parked under it, but the elephant was the proof, and everybody could go across it now.
I just really hope that the president isn't listening to this show right now, because at some point then we're going to start measuring everything based on elephants. Like, we need more elephants.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can see us going down this too. Sorry, Karl, your purpose was that that this is about building bridges, metaphorically and otherwise, requires work, requires some planning, and it probably requires sacrifice in others. Is that really where we were getting at, and not talking
Yeah.
about elephants taking dumps on bridges?
Yeah, the elephant was to get attention, and it certainly does in the exhibit at the museum. That gets your attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's the interesting part of the story to me. But then I just thought on the way home about 20 different things that I can glean from that, and that's how I always operate. It's just whatever I saw that was interesting to me. I think about, and we used to build not really bridges, but ramps. I'm going to put up a picture here. Stuart, can you relate to this? I don't know how much JD did of this. I think it's a fake picture because it shows the kid somehow vaulting off the ramp. He's higher than the ramp, but there's 4 boys in the picture laying on 5 boys laying on
There's
the ground.
5. I think after this, there's only 4.
Yeah, at least the last 2 probably got some tire marks.
4.5.
But they're laying, across where the bike might land, and he's jumping them in the spirit of Evel Knievel, I'm sure. It was popular at the time of Daredevil, and there's 5 girls behind these 5 boys. One's praying, it looks like, and the other 4 can't believe it. One of them looks kind of happy. And there's a dad or grandpa watching all this take
Seems
place.
like a dad thing to do, too.
It's just kind of how we did things back then.
Yeah, if you wreck, just walk it off. You'll be fine.
My point from this was that my brother and I built a lot of stuff like this. We built a raft that sank right away. We built these ramps that usually collapsed when you went over them because we only took about 5 minutes of planning and whatever materials we could find behind the shed or wherever we were. And you can see the erector set down at the bottom. Part of an erector set is the base for this ramp and a cinder block and then a random piece of concrete or something that they found somewhere and just a rotting piece of wood, plywood, and a couple of 2x4s. So and that was my experience growing up. I gave about 5 minutes of thought to the bridge. And unfortunately, I think that's what we do in building relationships. We say, we need to build a bridge. Well, I'll go do it. And I'll try. Just like we built these ramps that inevitably failed pretty fast. But one of the things that's important in bridge building, my grandpa and Grandpa Joe was a bridge builder in his county. He built the old county bridges. Most of them are still in use today. And he would probably have said
How many elephants per bridge, though? Trump wants to know.
He didn't use elephants. I think he probably used road graders or something to go across it. No, there's no elephants in Lincoln County, Oklahoma. But he was kind of famous. They called him Little Joe, and he would build bridges. And he would probably say it like this. He'd probably say, "There's a lot to it," when he would say it. And what he meant was that it's more difficult than you think. It takes a lot of effort to build foundations and things like that. So I started off by saying, take site analysis and conditions. Congress once debated, here's the design for the bridge, but Congress once debated a well-known port project called the Bridge to Nowhere. Initially, it's loudly condemned as a prime example of wasteful government spending, and then under Alaska's then governor Sarah Palin, she still got the money under the guise of a bigger appropriations bill that they kind of slipped it back in there, and she still got the money for the Bridge to Nowhere. And you can look that up. But before we build a bridge, there's geotechnical, environmental, load statistics, and all these other factors to determine the type of bridge needed, as well as the current environment that can support the weight of the bridge and maintain its effectiveness. But all of that goes into building an actual bridge. And I have a picture up of the design, the actual design documents from Mr. Eads. where he began to kind of sketch this bridge out and plan for it. Like I said, we don't do that much investigation. And I would relate this in church to mission trips.
Yeah.
That go into a place and don't think about what they're doing much before they go in there. And you could probably give me examples of exceptions and all that, but to do things like bring a bunch of people in and build something and never hire the local contractors that you just put out of a job in that country. And for, the teenagers that can afford it, it's a vacation and so on. And we just don't think about what we're doing.
Well, I mean, that's the funny part too. What you even just said, Karl. Like, would you rather have a local contractor build something for you, or would you rather the kids from youth group do it for you?
Mm-hmm.
15-year-old jacked up on Mountain Dew. Which one?
It's good slave labor, but no, you're right. I don't have any good examples of when I've seen this done well. I mean, I have an example. It was a friend of mine that I remember him telling me they took kids down to, it may have been Haiti or something like that. And the kids' main job, what they would do is they got to paint the buildings at this compound. And my friend that was down there started noticing this compound has so many layers of paint on it. Because mainly they just came down to paint it every year. It wasn't what they needed. It wasn't important. And the more important thing was that the kids would get beach days after they had a hard labor's day of painting these buildings that didn't need paint.
Yeah.
Well, and
it's
maybe
that
more
kind of lip
importantly,
service.
the church gets the photo shoot that happens.
Absolutely. And I just find it insane. But you're right, Karl. Missions where we don't want to do the investment, we don't want to do the long work, the hard work, the investment of going to a place, the investment of even being able to empower locals to do something as well too, because we're the white saviors.
And sometimes you don't need to go. Sometimes that's a toxic environment like church that you don't want to build a bridge back to, and you don't need to build a bridge back to. They need to change what they're doing before we start building bridges back to them. So there's bad environments. There's no people that we don't want to connect with, but there are environments that are toxic. But you also can't assume that if you're going to build a bridge to an unstable environment, it's not going to be easy. Like we keep saying, it's hard work, and it's a lot of studying that culture. And I really just am against colonialism or even religious colonialism that says if we go there, it's going to fix everything. You don't know how good their life is right now. They may not have the things you have, but their life may be better before you came than after you came, and things like that. So you've got to sit down and draw the bridge out on paper, and you got to know the environment, and you got to know what the soil's like, and you got to do surveys, and you got to put in the work to build a bridge. You can't just decide that because I think I'm right and God is on my side that I need to build a bridge to that person. And I can just do it however I want. And I can go in and tell them they're sinful and they just need God, and that'll solve all their problems when it doesn't. You don't know their environment, and you really don't take the time to know the people. Mm-hmm. Right? So Mr. Eads did that. He was committed to difficult stuff. He also, the south end of the Mississippi River, which empties out into the Gulf of Mexico, was kind of getting clogged up, and JD may know this from history, and they were doing all kinds of things to try to scoop the sand out of there and so on, and the soil and sediment. But he built eddies. They weren't that hard to build, but that was a difficult concept for them to grasp. He also had a really hard, difficult solution to the Panama Canal, which never got accepted, but it basically was about railroading ships across. A much harder solution. We don't know. That might have been better. It might have been like the steel bridge, but we don't know.
I think actually Mexico's trying to build something like that now.
Really? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that may have emerged from his, but the message is you got to consider the environment, right?
Yeah.
Before you just dive into something, it's good to care about people.
Or even should I be building this bridge? Is this the right bridge to be building?
Exactly.
In
is it a bridge to nowhere? Is it?
Is it because that's evangelism has given us that it has taught people that there's a bridge everywhere, and your job is just to go in as a blunt force and just shove things on people without context, without knowing anything else, like you're mentioning. And it just is offensive, and it pushes people off, and it pisses people off too.
Yeah. It's a manifest destiny. We have the right to do that. We're right. God is on our side. It's always going to be good for them. For me personally, that's involved the Black community. Got the longing in my heart, something that says, I want to help people. And that's my general demeanor, right? But sometimes I don't need, like you mentioned, I don't need to take my white savior attitude into the Black community. That's not going to help. And so I've got to find more nuanced ways to help. And with that is a lot of study, a lot of planning, a lot of thinking about what I'm doing. So I make sure I do the things that are helpful, not hurtful. Mm-hmm. I don't build a bridge.
You also have to build those relationships. I was going to say you have to build the relationships before you can do anything. Because, I mean, to continue the metaphor of the bridge, you can't ship goods across a bridge that isn't built. So, like, obviously you're going to have to do those things first. And that entails all those things you're talking about. I was even think you started talking about mission works and stuff, but I think even with people going into relationships in general, if you want to go super broad with it, but even inside the church, people coming into the church, I think when people come into the church, they're often, and kind of is what I'll talk about a little bit later, but there's a lot of trauma that comes in with that because of the unwillingness to bend or break, and that it is such a, just like it is with mission trips, it's such a relationship that's built off you fulfilling these prerequisites, whatever they be for whatever certain church. It's not built
conditional
upon love or grace. Yeah, it's all conditioned. That's right.
But even pushing that metaphor further, Karl, too, if we're just hammering this metaphor into the ground, I mean, when we think about projects like this bridge, and I don't know if they told you this, I'm curious how many people died so that bridge could be made. And so the idea of building bridges, like sometimes there's casualties. And I think we have to ask ourselves the questions like you're mentioning ahead of time. How do we make sure there aren't casualties? How do we make sure that we're not just treating people like, when I was a church planter, we had to go to some seminar, and I remember a guy teaching us, it's like the people that you get at first when you're church planting, they're basically the scaffolding. They won't be around forever, but you really need them. And that just floored me because I'm like, these are people, and what are we doing here with the gospel? These are just they're pawns. You'll get the big money people later. But it just ends up being that we don't need to be in the business of just naturally creating casualties for the gospel.
Yeah. And so when I think about that, of course, U.S. has their things, but also the Commonwealth of Britain. And the things they did to build bridges, some that didn't need to be built just because they needed the resources from those places to fuel their empire. JD, you were going to say something?
I was looking for how many people died. I see that it says 15 workers died, 2 permanently disabled, and 77 others seriously injured.
That was probably considered negligible at that time, and there were people that were desperate for work. Yeah.
But I actually think some of those were people. I think some of them were the people from Karl's first picture. I think the elephant had just kind of ran through some of them testing out the bridge. So we have to discount some of those that got flattened.
Yeah, and that's their own fault because they demanded proof, right? So,
break a couple.
I want to read through this really quick. The materials we build with are also important. It's been about 150 years since James Eads proved to us that steel was a reliable building material to carry humans and locomotives from one side of the river to the other. We now accept it, and elephants. We now accept it as fact and know that steel has many benefits for building bridges and buildings, but we also understand it's not the ultimate material. Modern day, when the Minnesota bridge fell down, it was a steel bridge because it was inspected and not repaired. It fell down. We were involved in a local bridge here nearby that was in the same condition, and we finally sped up the process a little bit to get that bridge replaced. So the point I wanted to make was some people want us to see the experiences of the first century, and some people are going to think I'm taking a leap here, but I'm going to do it anyhow. Some people want us to see the experiences of the first century as the ideal model for the 21st century. But remember, these people didn't understand concepts like mental health or trauma, and even the ones some now call God made some wrong assumptions about humanity. His main defender falsely claimed that people were worthless without the Messiah he was defending and once persecuted. I'm not trying to dispute or discourage anyone's faith. I do want to point out that steel was once appeared almost magical and was regarded as the ultimate material for building bridges and structures throughout much of American history. A nearby bridge, and I just told that story, it remains a valuable building material, but we need to understand its limitation. And so let me just take another leap. When we discover fundamental concepts like love, compassion, and empathy that seem universally eternal and almost magical, we must remember that there are nuances and complex aspects to all of these things, mainly because they're used in different ways and sometimes misused by people with malicious intent. Things like unconditional love and forgiveness are highly valuable materials or tools, but that doesn't mean they have no limits in their effectiveness. In the wrong hands, they can even be turned into weapons. So,
yep, there ain't no hate like Christian love.
And we, sometimes abuse survivors call forgiveness the F word because they were forced to forgive or love unconditionally, so to speak. Finding the best materials are great, but sometimes people that say the most about don't actually love people very well at all.
And I like how you brought up, Karl, too, that the idea that some bridges fail and collapse because there's no maintenance on them as well. Yeah. And if we're pushing that, too, in the metaphor, I mean, oftentimes the church will do something to where like, well, we saved them and now we've moved on.
Yeah.
And so then it's kind of neglect within it. Whereas if we're talking about this as ultimately relationships, I feel like the bridge has to be maintained to show A, that you care about it, and B, that you want to keep that connection going. And I just don't think it's something that's just fixed in state after you've done it and it's done. I think there's a whole dynamic towards constantly being a part of the process, which is investment. And a lot of times the church doesn't like long-term investment unless you're investing in the church with your pocketbook.
I want to quickly make this last point, and then you guys can do whatever you want here. So on the way home, I thought about it.
Don't say that.
I thought about a dozen different things about this topic, and it's why I find history so fascinating, because it tells of achievement and imagination and creativity and determination. But it also reminds us of our failures and how many people might have been mistreated in St. Louis during the time Mr. Eads was building this famous bridge.
It was a lot.
I described in there the Camp Jackson affair, where Missouri, and especially that part of Missouri, was divided on the issue of slavery. But the Camp Jackson affair pitted longstanding pro-slavery supporters against German American immigrants. The city heavily contributed to the Union war effort, and when it was over, Captain Nathaniel Lyon's forces forced the pro-Confederate militia to surrender and then marched them through town. When the pro-slavery people mocked the Union soldiers, dozens of them were killed and many, many more were injured. So that led to anti-German rioting in St. Louis and further worsening the already tense situation. Lyon's actions were credited with saving Missouri for the Union, but later on in history, in 2014, Michael Brown was shot by Officer Darren Wilson, in the neighboring Ferguson, Missouri. And so that mistreatment and misconduct is still happening, right? So the need to build bridges in St. Louis was accelerated by rapid growth, which is positive, but it also brings challenges. That bridge has lasted for 150 years, but bridges between people still haven't been built correctly, right? It's mechanically solved a serious issue, right? Of too many people in one place trying to get goods and services back and forth and just trying to survive. But the human bridges still haven't been built effectively, right? I think that's about all I want to say. People can read the blog when I get
I think you're right. And I don't know what the answer is, especially where we're at today in our country, where everything is so just divided, and everyone sees the other side as they or them, and how we're blanket blaming things right now. And I mean, I think it has to come down to, we have to get away from this, like, who's right or who's wrong, like in some sort of an argument. Do we actually want to live together and be co-people? Do we actually want to have a bridge between us? And I don't know if America has the answer to that yet. I think there's a lot of us that want to push bridges, but I think there's a lot of folks that don't. And it's a really kind of sad place that we're at, and I'm really not sure how we're going to get out of it. Mm-hmm. And we have a long history of having this bridge problem.
Maybe I could close out with what I kind of close this out. So I said, wood is not the ideal material for building bridges that carry larger payloads, and our perception of the past and its glories should be weighed in light of the new knowledge we have gained. These are the types of leaders I aim to emulate and encourage in the future. The kind of person I hope to become as I move forward, although with a bit of dread and caution. The future requires better beliefs or assumptions, but it also demands better bridges. The load is heavier, the environment is harsher, and failure results in more disastrous consequences. But we got to build better bridges, right?